Hello, everyone. Welcome to Esoteric Shifts, where me and Sherisse we explore everything esoteric, supernatural that happens in the spiritual awakening journey. And today we are going to talk about the healing that happens in layers. We're going to talk about how the healing journey is never a straight line and it always like spirals out and we come back to the same lessons. And sometimes you cannot force yourself to learn those lessons and all this cool stuff, right? So, Cherise, how
Yeah,
excited are you about talking about this topic? What do you think?
I am super excited about this. This and the journey being in waves are the two things that I love to talk about the most. So I'm really excited about it. Yeah.
Oh my God, me too. Me too. Because, okay, before we share, you guys are going to see me eating apples and Sherry's blowing hair on her face because it's very hot out there. And I'm very hungry out here. So we're going to keep things very humane, so that we don't die while we record. So, like I was saying, that, the healing that happens in layers, the reason I wanted to really discuss this and bring it to our audience is because for some time now, a lot of people have been realizing that the healing journey is not a straight line. We start out thinking, like, oh, I'm going to begin my healing journey. I'm going to do all the inner work, the shadow work, maybe do some past life regression, like, Charisse does. And then I'm going to just snap out of it. I won't have any of those problems. I'll be a brand new version of myself. But it hardly happens like that, right? And Charisse is a past life regression therapist. We have covered in an episode in Soulpreneur Symposium how she helps people with healing wounds from the past life, which you can explore. Link will be in the description for that episode. But Sharice, can you tell us? You have worked with so many people and you have had your own healing journey. So why do you think like we assume in the beginning that whoa, we are going to snap out of our wounds and traumas, and what the reality really gives us that snaps us back to reality about the reality of healing. What do you think?
So it's funny, you and I have talked about this a lot over the years that we've been friends and colleagues and, each other's spiritual rocks. And it really does come down to there are so many layers to every single trauma in our life and every single wounding and every single thing that bugs us, whether it's bugging us about ourselves or about other people or whatever. We feel like we've dealt with it. And then there's another layer, and then another layer, and then another layer. Um, it's funny, I just from personal experience, just recently I unraveled another layer of my marriage to my now ex-husband, and that was really interesting for me to kinda, like, pick at the beginning of that relationship that, yes, there were a lot of things that, were really amazing about it, but also, the seeds were there of how it was going to unravel right from day one. And, we hindsight's 2020, but you can never know for sure. But that journey of kind of going through that and recognizing that and then releasing it, healing it is super important to our soul's transition into the next level, into the next dimension, into the next iteration, into evolving into a more complete, I hate to say perfect being because there's no such thing. Not even in the spirit realm is there such a thing as a perfect being, but into the best version of us that we can possibly be is probably the best way to describe it. And yeah, it's you're always going to be finding little things, whether it's yourself or other people, that you have like these little aha moments. And then you have to unwind that and heal it and let it. Sometimes it has to marinate for a hot minute. And then eventually it just kind of like releases itself. And you're like, okay, now that's done. Time to move on to the next thing. You may have a moment where it's all shiny and new, that new car smell, And then eventually it kind of like, becomes that rough next layer that needs to slough off. Kind of
Wow.
like a snake.
Kind of like a snake or rabbit hole, that keeps on going and going. I keep hearing this, now that you mention it, like lately on my threads and on my Facebook, people say that, the shadow work, the never-ending shadow work just keeps on going, that never ends. And people are realizing lately, and me included, that, yes, the shadow work just goes on and on. Like, like for me, for example, the majority of the shadow work that I've been finding myself doing for the last 3, 4 weeks is with my wounds, with my, parental wounds, stuff that happened with my father and stuff, right? And man, it's like so difficult. It feels like, especially when it comes to wounds with parents and stuff, which later shows up in relationships, of course, you know, that stuff goes like so deep that I feel like the things that trigger me, there's so many things that I've done inner work which doesn't have to do with parental wounds that I have found myself coming out of. But when it comes to parental wounds, no matter how much I do, the same trigger keeps coming back. And it feels like, am I even doing something? Like seriously? Or am I just, wasting my time here? Because you can do it for years and it seems like you cannot even make a dent on it. And but then you realize that every time you do inner work, you are uncovering something. Like, okay, you saw something that you didn't know. Like last week, I discovered, last or 2.5 weeks, right? I discovered that a lot of my agreeableness and that, was actually due to something that had to do with my father, actually. And I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know that. I didn't have a clue. I'm like, you keep discovering something, but I've been doing that for some time. So, do you think it happens or it has happened with you too that when you have realized that maybe after years of digging, when you thought there is nothing, you know, can be found or anything, suddenly something new popped up? I'm like, oh my God, then how much more is left? Have you had experiences like that?
Oh, absolutely. So for example, last night I was in a meeting. It was kind of a charged, heated meeting with people. And I used to have a very hair trigger. I guess I should probably have
Mm,
started with that. I used to have a very hair trigger where I would get angry very easily
mm,
and like lash out at people. And I have spent a very long time in my adult life kind of like soothing that away, healing the wounds that are causing that, making sure that, I'm coming from a grounded space wherever possible, that I am not allowing things to affect me that deeply.
yeah.
But last night, I swear to God, there were a couple of people in that room that they triggered the living bleep out of me. As I was so shocked is probably the best way to describe it. Even in the moment,
Mm,
it was like I was having an out of body experience, like watching myself like not necessarily say anything because I tried very hard not to, but watching myself like swallow the words so that I didn't like lash out too badly and hurt other people. Um, and thinking like, whew, there's something that needs to be addressed there at some point when maybe you're a little less hot under the collar about it, but definitely there's something that needs to be addressed there. And I think that's another big one is it doesn't help anything at all to try and address whatever it is when you're still in that emotion.
mm. That is so true. Wow.
Because I don't know if you found that as well, but definitely for me, if I'm in the emotion, I cannot I cannot figure out what the actual true root cause of it is,
Mm,
and I certainly can't heal it. I may be able to calm it down, but I can't release it until the emotion isn't there. Do you find the same thing?
absolutely. Yes. I'm so glad you touched on this, Cherise, because this is something that is so important, and I hardly see much of anybody talking about it because I guess everybody thinks everybody knows, I guess. I don't know. But this, I think, needs to be brought out because, like, when I experience trigger, just like you, at that moment, all I can do is stay centered, stay calm. At that moment, the priority is to not react. As long as you're not reacting, you're winning because you're not falling back into the pattern and giving into the same timelines basically, because that's what I had been realizing, that every time you fall into the disharmonious reactions and choices, you enter the same dance, the same disharmonious dance that you have danced 1,000 times before, and at the end you're like, oh my god, I did the same thing. Somebody clicked your button and you did your little dance. I'm like
I up like a top and off you go.
and up you go. And I don't think, like, if you look at that, if somebody is like so easily triggerable, some people can use it to manipulate us. Like, like, look, I'm going to just say this word and look how this person goes off, We're like almost like robots or like little toys, right? And see how we are when we do not react, but sorry, respond. And then, so I think when the trigger is happening, just like you said, like, the only priority is like until we are like really ascended beings or something, we can heal everything at that moment, right then and there. I'm not there yet. I don't know.
Even like ascended beings can do that, honestly. I really don't. Like,
I think ascended beings get triggered left, right, and center looking at us. So right, So I'm like, so at that moment, all that you can think is like, let's stay centered, let's stay centered, let's stay centered, feel my emotions and see how I can calmly come out of the situation while I'm on my bed and I have time to process my emotions. That's the win. That is really the win. Because I have not personally arrived at any other way, where I can say I can transmute that emotion while the trigger is happening. That is too overwhelming. That would drive me mad if I try to do that. That is impossible. Like, too much, too much. I'm not there yet.
absolutely. And I find even like for me, it takes a while. Like, it's not even like, oh, let me just wait 24 hours and then it'll be fine and I can attack it then. It needs to be like, you have to wait until the charge is gone for the emotions completely. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people, especially and even in the spiritual realm, they don't talk about that, right? Like, they don't talk about the fact that if the thought of that is going to, like, raise your blood pressure and get you all back into that same emotional state, you're not ready to heal it yet.
Yeah.
You have to be, like, completely calm about it. You can nibble around the edges of it for sure, but you can't slough off that entire skin, which allows you to raise to the next, level,
Yeah.
up leveling in a game, right?
Yeah.
Sloughing off that skin, allowing you to grow that next little bit until you've kinda, like, removed the charge from that, and
Mm.
it's really tough to do that on your own. You really do need someone to, kinda talk you through it or walk you through it, whether that's a therapist or a psychologist or
Yeah.
a counselor of some kind or a spiritual guide, to kinda get you from point A to point B so that you can but even then, I don't think it's necessarily something that even the most skilled person
Mm.
can, like, address head on right out of the gate.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've felt this,
No,
but
you're right.
for me, yeah, whenever I'm trying to do that with a client, like, if they're not ready yet, if that's still too triggering, it's just gonna backfire. Then they get mad at you and then they leave.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. I think this is another layer of the healing process we are touching is that, you cannot head into healing directly. You require that safe space in yourself. You find that safe space where you're not going to feel, like you are overwhelmed, uncentered. I remember yesterday, just yesterday, I was speaking with one lady, on Messenger, and she was sharing that, I've got unhealed traumas and wounds that is coming up from the past, and it has to do with my inner child and stuff. And so I was messaging her and I was saying, like, oh, you have to go back to your inner child. You have to feel what she felt, the emotions and this and that. And she was sharing that, yeah, but thing is, there's so much pain, anger, and shame. When I want to go there, I cannot. I just cannot. And that is when I shared with her the same thing that I have realized and shared with many of my students and clients, which is you cannot start the healing process. Usually, with my students, I never start the transmutation thing, at least for the first month. I teach them how to center. Just come back to your center, relax, come back to your center, into your inner sanctuary. Because until you have that rock solid sense of that there is a place that you can return to within yourself, when the disharmony comes during your transmutation process, if you don't have your home to return back to, you are going to run. You're going to be like, I don't like this. Just think, like, and if you go out somewhere new and bad things happen and you don't have a home, how are you going to feel? Having a home to return back to keeps you anchored. So that's why I say the first month, at least centering. Until they know their center and they can come back to it like within 5 minutes, there's no point teaching transmutation because you cannot. You cannot harmonize anything when you have not found your inner harmony rhythm. What do you think about it?
We do something very similar in past life regressions. So we thought the first 2 or 3 things that we do are all about finding that grounded, safe space for you,
Mhm.
and then moving from that into the things that might feel a little more challenging, a little more scary, a little more uncomfortable in some way, shape, or form. And then from there, at any point, the person can go back to that safe space, whichever of the 2 they kinda jump into, and feel safe and secure. So or at least they always have that ability. They never do, but it's just the knowing that they've got that available to them.
Mhm.
Isolations I had one lady who continually jumped back there, like, she couldn't deal with any of it yet. She really thought she was ready, but she wasn't ready yet. But that's okay, right? Like, that's part of the journey. And it was one out of, I don't know, I've probably done 300 past life regression programs now, people.
300.
Yeah, it's been a lot, like yeah, it's been a lot, and so, out of that, like, I've had one that could not face the things that she thought she was ready to face,
Ah.
and even for her, just the act of giving herself that compassion to actually try this was enough. Like, she afterwards, we talked a couple weeks later because I always do a check-in, like, a week and a half later, and so we talked about a week and a half later, and she's like, "You know what? That was the best experience I've ever had in my life. It really worked on a soul deep level. I feel so different now." Did your power just go out?
Yeah, it'll come back. Give it like 2, 3 minutes, it'll come back. And
I'm like,
my
"You're like burn out."
it keeps happening out here in England. My UPS is going to beep every like 30 seconds, I guess. But I'll
Well, the good news is Zoom won't pick it up, so you're good.
Zoom and I take it out. Oh, that is good news. That is good news. Became cute right now. Okay. No, no, I really want to explore this because you are a past life regression therapist. And I just came to know, even though I have been speaking with you for the last 4.5 years, that you have done 300 of them. Look, here's back. And 300 past life regression. Wow. And although we did speak in detail about past life regression experiences, which if you guys are watching, go visit the link in the description and watch the whole episode. It's going to blow your mind. Sherisse talks about aliens and reptilians, people who found out they were in Woodstock. This was insane. But I want to ask you this, like 300 plus experience with people doing past life regression, and we're talking about the healing that happens in layers. So did you see how the healing happened for those people? Did they immediately came out of their major patterns and wounds and found themselves free? Or did you see them still learning their lessons and then in their life? How does that happen? This. It's still happening to us? I really want.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it depends. It depends on the person. It depends how far along on the healing journey of the thing that they want to deal with they already are. And it depends how ready they actually are to let go of the comfort and the security of the pattern that isn't serving them, but that
Mhm.
their subconscious, that inner child, feels really safe experiencing. And I think that's the big secret to all of the trauma that we hang on to
Yeah.
is that, and I think you would agree with this, is
Mm.
that that is the subconscious, that inner child, um, is saying, better the devil that I know than the devil that I don't.
Mm.
Like, I know and I understand and I get this moment and how to deal with this moment, but
Mhm.
that moment over there that you want in your
Mhm.
conscious mind or your super conscious ones, forget that noise. That sounds really scary. And so that creates that distance between what you want and what your reality is.
Yeah.
And that is can be, I guess I shouldn't say is, but it can be an impossible gap to jump
Wow.
without kind of coaxing your inner child along with whatever tools you need to use. Um, 99% of all of the traumas and the things
Yeah.
are subconscious, just hanging on to it.
Oh.
Our conscious minds don't hang on to trauma.
Mm.
Our superconscious doesn't hang on to trauma. The id doesn't. That's where all of our spirit guides live. That
Right.
doesn't hang on to trauma.
It's a
It's on
subconscious.
this
Right.
area right here, the heart chakra, maybe sometimes the throat chakra, the solar plexus chakra,
Yeah.
and and those all of the body chakras, all of them hang on to all of it
Oh my
and
God.
keep it stuck. And you can only nibble it away.
My God. Makes complete sense. I'm really curious to know another thing because you are a past life regression therapist. I won't get this opportunity to ask this particular question. You have worked with 300 plus people and we are talking about healing, right? So there must be common themes, right, amongst those 300 people. What were the most common, you know, themes in terms of healing that you found out? You know, what was the thing? Top three.
What
So,
they want or what they actually end up with?
what they had going on that was keeping them stuck, and they found
What
out
they thought it was or what it actually turned out to
what it actually turned out to be.
be.
Yeah.
2 different things. Um, what for the most part, most of them,
Yeah.
it was, that they didn't feel worthy
Uh,
to mile the most symbolic way. They didn't feel like they deserved it, either because of something that they had done in a past life, something that they had not done in a past life, someone that they had been in a past life,
mm-hmm.
or something that had been done to them in a past life.
Ah, makes sense.
All of them manifested differently, but it's all about worthiness at the core. Every single one of them. Now, I did a session with you. Would you agree that worthiness felt like your
Ah. Yeah, I mean, what is it about this worthiness thing? Why us humans we struggle with this? Is this one of the themes? I mean, you are a past life regression therapist, and I know that you have been a follower of Dolores Cannon, who started was one of the pioneers, if I'm not wrong, and she talked a lot about those things. So, what is your idea about why do you think worthiness is such a big thing, even right now in this day and age, where a lot of people are like, oh, I am confident, I'm this, and yet you're struggling with worthiness. Why this has not changed over so many years and with so many people? What is it?
it's the human condition. It is how as a civilization, not just societies, but as a civilization,
Mhm.
like a global civilization, how we are raising our children is unworthiness,
Mm.
is we are instilling in them that they are not inherently worthy of loving themselves, that they are not inherently worthy of, I'm going to name it, food, water, shelter, clothing, parental love, supervision, being allowed to escape supervision in some cases. Um, we don't value those things as a civilization enough for all children, for all humans. And, and medical care and all the things that go along with that. We don't value those things for our children
Mhm.
enough. And so it manifests as I am not worthy.
Mm.
And the children from poor countries who don't have enough food, who don't have enough clothing, who don't have adequate shelter, who don't have maybe their parents work all day and they don't
Mm.
have any time at all for them. Maybe they're just left to their own devices from the age of 2 or 3. Maybe they're made to work at a young age. Those children are not taught that they're worthy. And then the kids from more affluent communities
Yeah.
are it they know that that is happening because they have eyes and ears and they can see that there is
Literally.
this huge disparity, and so even if they have some or all of those things, they still feel guilt
Oh
because
my
they
God.
have it and nobody else does, and that is so destructive to civilization. I think it was easier when nobody had it, except very, very, very few people. The middle class has actually been a blessing and a curse in a lot
Yes.
of ways. I wish there wasn't so much abject poverty in the world,
Yeah.
and I'm doing my darndest to help that. But I wish there wasn't so much abject poverty in the world because it really does impact every single
Yeah.
one of us,
Yeah.
right from cradle to grave, and we all have to unwind it. And here's the
That is
big
so
thing.
true.
Can't say this to most people when they come to you for healing and you're like, "Oh, yeah, I'll help you with your feelings of anxiety or your, whatever it is." You're like, "You just don't feel worthy because what was your childhood like? How were you raised? Hmm. Were you raised by wolves? Were you raised in abject poverty? Um, oh, okay. Yeah. So you're feeling guilt and you're feeling like you didn't have enough to keep you safe, and everybody's kind of a little messed up because of it."
Oh my God, that is so true. That is so true. I mean, that the imbalance that you talked about, I mean, like you said, if, there's an imbalance of, a lot of people are in abject poverty and a lot of people, not a lot of people, there's this imbalance going on. And this imbalance is going to affect the whole of the collective. It's not going to remain here. Any imbalance affects the whole of the system. And you are absolutely right. And it is affecting those who have it. They are afraid of landing up there. One of the biggest fears, I think, collective fears, I have. I know that's oh, what if, being a spiritual teacher and coach has not been the easiest journey? A financial challenges. There's that doing things from alignment, cannot do things out of alignment. And then the fear keep coming up that is, oh, what if I go to the street? What if I lose all my money in my home and in the street? And why this fear is that if I go to the street is the fear. I don't think there was such a thing as a street 400 years back when there was no such thing as a street at all, right?
Well,
I-
but I think we have to look further back because up until like the Industrial Revolution-ish
yeah.
times, when things and people and ideas started really flowing across the globe really quickly, up until that point, most people in most cultures were secure. They did feel worthy. And it wasn't until the breakdown of the family, and not in the way that you think. I mean, everybody's like, "Oh," but the breakdown of the subsistence farmer family
Mm,
who, yeah, they might not have much, but they had, everybody was all together kind of in one room usually, and they had the bigger community around them of extended family and whatever. Um, they felt safe and secure in each other's love for the most part. There was some families that had generational trauma and whatever, but for the most part, they all were in it together.
mm,
And you see that now even in hunter-gatherer cultures and uncontacted or limited contact cultures,
mhm,
where they don't struggle with any of these problems. These are man-made problems.
mm.
The best way to fix them is to kind of, you know, use our subconscious to our advantage to
Wow.
heal it up. I want to hear your thoughts on this though,
No,
because I talk
this is
with
very interesting because,
station.
I mean, I didn't expect we are going to end up in this area because now I'm seeing like everything covers everything. Like, you cannot keep one area apart, right? Healing is connected with how the political situation is, or the collective unconscious is, or how things have been and things are not at the moment. One thing that I am curious to know, because again, the topic is the healing that happens in layers. But like you mentioned, that in tribal cultures, people don't experience self worth issue. Is it though? Because I'm just curious, what if, like in the tribal cultures, because it's a human conditioning, right? W- I mean, isn't it natural, like, let's say one person who is like a little more bulky and strong, and one person is born weak in the tribe or something and not as good of a hunter or something, and they're like, oh, I'm not being accepted by the tribe and stuff, and I'm always the weak one. This self-worth issues would still come out, right? Don't you think?
Not at the existential crisis level that
Oh.
we have going on in our cultured civilizations. Cultures in this civilization that are considered the more advanced ones,
Mm.
right? Um, uh, from what I understand, I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form, but I'm fascinated with archaeology and paleoarchaeology and anthropology and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, National Geographic nerd over here. Um, and so I know enough to be dangerous on these topics. And one of the things that I have learned over the years is that most of the uncontacted cultures or the limited contact cultures that we have, or the cultures that we've brought into our super culture, since, we've been keeping track of these things instead of just killing most of them and enslaving the rest. Um,
Mm.
Most of those cultures don't have words for a lot of the things that we struggle with.
Mm. Okay.
They don't, and so they don't also expect that everyone is going to play the exact same role in the society. They look for what your gifts are, and then that's the role that you play, right?
That is so
So
beautiful.
if someone who's got birth defects or has
Yeah.
some kind of thingy, they tend to be picked to be the shamans, to be the keepers of the light. Um, the people who are gifted hunters, they are the leaders of the hunt. The people who are really good at long distance running, they communicate with the various little tribes in the community. The people who are good at identifying plants, well, they get to be the people who are doing the gather part
What?
to that to s
Oh.
The people that are good at cooking get to cook, and the people that love kids get to babysit, and the people that are really good at tanning hides get to tan hides and process, and it's a different way of looking at it. We do the same kind of thing now, sorta, kinda, but we also
Mm,
layered tra layered meaning to those roles, right? So, some of those jobs are looked down on
yes.
in in the civilized world. Ugh, I hate that phrase. Um, and others of them are revered, right? Like the hunters and the runners are considered like the gods of the universe. They're like sports people, athletes. Um, and musicians, oh gosh, I didn't even think about musicians, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're revered in our culture, whereas, the person who's looking after your one-year-old so you can go to your drudge job
It looked down.
not paid very well, or the
Uh,
person who's in charge of cleaning latrines out
oh,
is
yeah.
definitely not looked upon as, and there's layers of worthiness to that, right?
Wow.
So
Wow. You have touched upon something so cool. Yes, yes. Continue, please. Yeah.
yeah. How does that play into your work? Like, do you find that as well? Would you have answered the same? Or would you have answered something completely different?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I was not expecting the way you know, tackled the question because I was pretty sure that, wow, in tribal culture, maybe a person might feel unworthy. And I think every culture has their own imperfection and their own learning journey. But I mean, I have been speaking with some people, like my friend, I think you have met her, Tiffany Babington, from New Zealand. You had her on one of your, summits last year.
Absolutely. Yes.
And
Yes.
she's currently, doing her degree. She's in her 60s, if I'm not wrong, and she's doing her degree, and she wants to do her PhD on the Maori language and the culture. She's from New Zealand. And
Yeah.
my friend Tam, who has been in South Africa, and she has, worked with, many of the ancient elders in South Africa, and her path is the path of shamanism. And I was reading her book, and all of them keep saying the same thing that, that in the ancient tribal culture, there was a place for the medicine people. Tam especially, she talks about, there was a place for the medicine people, like, the people who were like the shamans and the stuff. And, artists would do art. It was much more flexible. Yes, there were their own challenges were there, but right now, like, I think, like, just talking with you, it's opening me up that I think this massive self-worth crisis that is growing on for the last whatever years, I don't know, has to do with the way you say, the modern civilization. I wouldn't call it the super civilization. It doesn't look like it at all. But this modern civilization, where it's very much like,
Overarching civilization.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because it is so much industrialized. I think the word industry and corporate is what it is basically becoming. I think there was a Pink Floyd album, back in the days where it's like, they had this image that, people going into the school, the kids, and they're being trimmed basically in their head so that everybody fits. And that is, I think, is the problem. Like, we are all born with our unique gifts and unique talents. Like, like a fish can try its best to become a monkey, it will never succeed. And this is what we are expected in this world. And we are going through because if you are like if your talent is to take care of babies or write children's novels or become a spiritual teacher or past life regression therapist, and you're forced to do a job, otherwise you are not going to be able to survive, it just completely makes sense you're going to go through a self-worth crisis because you're going to think, okay, this is what I love, but this world does not want me to be this way. Isn't that? I just realized while speaking with you, honestly.
Yeah. I love when we do these sessions because we always open each other up to different perspectives and different ways of thinking of things. Yeah.
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 Oh my God. Oh my God. I want to ask one question because we are almost nearing the last, if not about 10, 15 minutes. Yeah. So I was thinking, like, we're talking about the healing that happens in layers. We have covered already so many interesting things that I did not even think of we are going to cover. But let's talk about a little bit about our own healing journey from our own lives. I know things about you, things that you have worked through. Can you share with us? A lot of people who are watching us probably are going through their healing journey or beginning their healing journeys at the moment. And can you share like what your life has looked like, how your healing journey began, where did it started, what was the main thing, and how the layers started peeling off and where you're at right, if I ask that. Yeah, look, I need to know that.
That's a layered question because, yeah. So my healing journey started when I was, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10. I was precocious. Maybe 11. I think I might have been 11. I think it was grade 5-ish. Um, and I was deeply unhappy with my life. There were some things that had happened with my parents already that I don't really want to get into because that's not the purpose of this, but there was some things that had happened that I needed to deal with. I didn't know that I needed to deal with them. I didn't know how to deal with them. But I was smart
Mhm.
and I started looking for answers. And so I was looking in books because that was my outlet. That was the access that I had was the school library. Um,
Ah.
thank God for school libraries. And so I was kind of ravenous in my search. I spent a lot of years reading everything that I could get my hands on that was even remotely related to psychology or esoterica or anything. One of my first books ever, let me just see, do I have it here? Yeah, I do. Um, one of the first books that I ever read was actually on this topic, was Life After.
Raymond.
I found a new copy of it lately, but I got this back in school a million years ago. And it was definitely an interesting experience to understand that not everything is from this life, that not all of the traumas even are from this life. Some of them definitely are. Some of them are definitely inflicted by the other people around us, but even their traumas are not necessarily
Mm.
this life stuff. Like, um, yes, some of them definitely are, but sometimes when someone comes from a quote unquote normal background, and they still have issues, it's because of unresolved trauma in other lives. And
Mm.
sometimes it's from generational trauma that they just don't tell you about. You never know which one it is, right? Sometimes you're going to find out about their generational trauma long ago, long after you've already healed your shit. So that was my first foray into it, was reading a lot about ESP and a lot because that was what they were calling it back in the day was ESP, extrasensory.
Professor perception. Yeah.
Absolutely. And past life regression and spontaneous past life regressions and weird things that were going on in the world and psychology books about trauma and books. I mean, I was reading stuff that was like university level, like
Wow.
the teacher's librarian, I loved her. Um, she would bring books in for me from the high school. She would order them in special so that I could learn more about whatever topic I was fascinated with.
Wow.
Thank you, Mrs. You're amazing. Oh, Mrs. Bolger. She got married to one of the other teachers and became Mrs. Bolger. Thank you, super. You were amazing. But yeah, it was definitely interesting to have um that experience and to have, and I was just blessed in a way that I had people in my life that were willing to nurture that kind of love and compassion in me, for history, for knowledge, that thirst for information. Then I got involved in learning about cults. So I spent a year learning everything there was to know about cults and thought I wanted to be a deprogrammer for a while and all the things. But that was a side project. The main project was how do I heal myself? And then one of the biggest books that I read that really changed my life, I cannot remember the name of it. It was something about the Peter Pan syndrome. I read it. I was living with my boyfriend at the time. I was like 18-ish, and we were living together. And he was, I know now, a narcissist, an actual like narcissist. And he had some unresolved traumas going on in his family from his dad dying when he was young. And but he was that book and the idea that I had been attracted to that person because of the things that had happened in my life really opened my eyes. Like, oh, I guess I haven't done all the healing I needed to do yet. So then I went even deeper, right? Like, oh
Mm.
my, let me go one level more, and then one level more, and one level more. But just like the onion, you think you got something figured out, and then a little while later, that skin's feeling awful loose and crinkly and crunchy. Yeah.
Wow, this is amazing. This is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing about this. We are almost nearing the end of our conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I want to hear about you. When did you first figure it out and start to go, maybe I need to.
Oh my God, this is into how much time have you got? Have you got 10, 15 more minutes? Because we really need to
How
know.
much time as it needs? How's that?
Okay. Okay. In brief, if you know many things about me already, but for the audience, if I have to share the healing journey, I mean, for me, my major journey has been about the dark night of the soul, the spiritual awakening process, the existential crisis. The healing journey, I think, like began after I became a spiritual teacher. One of the first thing I think I started healing was my self-worth issues, which you pointed out. And it's no kidding. I can say for sure that my healing journey, like my personal stuff, it did not start until I became a spiritual teacher, which I think like sounds weird. Like, oh, you became a spiritual teacher, you did not do your healing journey. I know. But my main thing has been my spiritual stuff going on. Yeah.
That is the case usually, though. Most of us kind of fall into it a step or two ahead of our audience, a step or two ahead of our clients, and just kind of like we're healing as they're healing. So your journey isn't unusual.
And that was so weird for me because I remember when I started, I was called to become a spiritual teacher and a guide and a coach. And here people were talking about traumas and wounds and parental wounds and stuff that happened in relationships. And I didn't know what is a trauma. I'm telling you, I've heard what a trauma is. I know it like what means, dictionary definition. I don't know. Yes, I've had experiences, but I did not integrate the experience, which I've integrated in the last 5 years. Oh, I just have been realizing I had traumas from the past, but I didn't know. So I was like, am I even ready? Why am I even being called to do that? And when I remember the first year in 2020, end of 2020, I started, working with you and and I was telling you like, you know, I don't know. I don't feel like, I am, good enough to become a spiritual teacher. And, that was also a time when one person completely, rejected me as, my very first, apparently, prospect of a client or a student. And I was ready to leave the country as a spiritual teacher. I was like, I don't want, no, if I can't be authentic, I don't think I can do this job. If people are going to reject me if I be authentic, I can't do it. I'd rather do my meditation, do my thingy at my home and play my music, and that'll be it. This is what I spoke to you about. And I remember you told me, Debjit, you got imposter syndrome. That was my beginning of unraveling from recognizing that I have imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome has to do with your self worth. Absolutely. I knew that I had inferiority complex, the way I healed my inferiority complex was not by actually healing it when I was younger, it was by creating superiority complex, which was not a very healing thing to do. I tried to get to amp myself up. No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm a genius. I'm this. I'm that. But no, the inferiority complex was still buried under. So I balanced it in a way, but that was not the best way to go about it. It did help me to come out of my victim to the hero self, but as I wake into my wizard self, I started understanding, oh, okay, I've got self worth issues. I can call myself a hero or a wizard or whatever, darn name I can think of. I've got inferiority complex, I've got self worth issues. And you was the first one who pointed that to me. Much later, many things started unraveling. Even just last month or 3 months back, my girlfriend pointed out, like, David, you have got traumas from school. The things that happened to me at school, for bullying and everything. I used to think like, oh, those are normal experiences. People experience that. It's not a big deal. I should not make a big deal about it. And she was saying like, no, you are traumatized. I'm like, can I call that a trauma? Because people have gone through worse. How can I call that a trauma? And that is another thing. Like when I one thing is like I cannot call my stuff trauma because I felt I've lived a very privileged life. And many people go through far worse. They have gone through abuse, they have gone through things that are so horrendous. And I always had the thing like, no, I should not call these things trauma. These are just bad experiences. But I am now realizing, no, they were trauma for me. And trauma is subjective. I cannot compare myself. Every soul is here in the learning journey. And, this is what I want to
Absolutely.
share. Yeah,
What's one person's average Tuesday is someone else's PTSD inducing life changing event. Like for some people, stubbing a toe is the thing they're going to like recall in slow motion detail for the rest of their life.
that is so true. That
That's
is
not for
so
me.
true.
I stub my toes all the time, but for somebody on the planet, that's the moment that their brain locked in on and said, "That moment right there,
Oh,
that's your trauma. Welcome to PTSD land.
oh my God. This,
You're gonna bury that for the rest of your life."
oh my God. This was such an This is so true. This is so true. I'm realizing all these things right now. So, in short, like my unraveling happened after my spiritual awakening, and you have been a very big, you know, part of that, journey. We had a very interesting discussion, and I know that you don't have much time. So, we are going to wrap the discussion up, and we are going to talk much more about healing and transformation and, past life regression in upcoming episodes of Esoteric Shifts. If you guys had not watched our past episode, go visit the playlist. Link is in below in the description. And Shays, just quickly let us know because I think some of the audience are thinking like, she's a past life regression therapist. She has done for 300 people, no less. So, can you tell us, like, if somebody is thinking, like, what kind of healing can I experience? What kind of transformation can I experience if I work with her? Because you can work with Cherise directly. Her links will be in the description. Can you let them know, like, what can they experience in terms of healing when they work with you as for past life regression?
Confidence, confidence, almost instant confidence. You walk out of because it's just one longer session, and you walk out of that session with an abundance of confidence about yourself. And that is the most important thing. You feel like you can handle anything because you've watched yourself handle some of the most interesting, challenging, exciting, wild moments. You've watched yourself die. No spoiler alerts, but you watch yourself die. You watch yourself, have a funeral or not have a funeral and have animals eat you, whatever it may be. And then you realize that that's just like one little blip
Yes.
in a millennia or more of lives, and we're living all of them all at the same time, dancing on the same head of the pin. So don't even get me started on time, because time is a weird construct. And I heard okay, so I'm just gonna like go off on a tangent, and then I want to talk to you for a minute. I heard recently that we may actually be in a black hole,
Okay.
be in that time
Yeah,
dilation,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
time space, and that's why all of this weird shit's happening.
That makes sense. That makes
So
sense. The universe just keeps getting weird,
I love
isn't it?
physicists. I would marry all the physicists. I would marry all of them just so I could experience their brains
Yeah.
on a day-to-day basis. Although they'd probably make me nuts because they would like burn the house down. But okay. So
Oh my, yeah.
turning it back on you, what kind of outcome from can people expect from working with you?
Wow. Thank you so much for asking. you know, Oh my God. The thing is like, since I started as a spiritual teacher in 2020 and now I have been refining who I am and what I have to offer. And the main thing that I'm seeing, that the essence of my work is the inner work. Like I was sharing with you, like Cherise helps you, discover all the lessons that you have learned and, maybe had forgotten in your past life, and seeing yourself dealing with the dragons in the past makes you realize that you are a dragon. Why? And yeah, and I think like what I do is help you recognize that in this life and the present circumstances that you're going, the emotional battles and the disharmony and the lessons that are coming up for you in this life, how you can start integrating them faster by coming back to your inner center point. Because often these lessons are coming in from our current experiences and we are not even recognizing them because we don't have a stable inner foundation within. So I help people, you know, to find their inner center. And once they find their inner center, they start transmuting their experiences and they start growing really, really, really fast. And they come back in alignment with their life path. And life suddenly starts becoming that life what your soul has been craving for. You know, it's not an easy path. I will never say that the inner work is going to be easy. I'm not going to say when you come in alignment with your life path, your life is going to be resistance free, challenge free. But I will assure you, when you come back in alignment, you're going to feel like you are home, that you are finally home. You are doing what you're here to do, what you came here to do. And so that's what I help people do. If it resonates, yeah, absolutely. And there it
Go
goes.
from victim to hero to wizard. I all want to be a wizard, I tell you.
Thank you so much, Cherise. We are going to have much more wonderful discussions and go check out the playlist. Cherise has already spoken on time before we recorded sessions. Therefore, go check out our playlist. And Cherise, I am going to thank you for such a wonderful discussion. And we look forward to another such discussion very, very soon. And yes, everybody, if you have enjoyed, follow her. Her socials will be in the description. And give this video a like, subscribe to our channel, leave comments. I'll personally request Cherise to respond to your comments whenever she's available. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And go do some work with Debjit because, it's really important. Just saying.
Thank you so much.
Man, it's really, really important. That inner work to find that balance where all of your chakras are in alignment and you're feeling like you can run on 100 cylinders. Yes, I mixed the metaphors there. I don't care. Run on all cylinders. That is the best feeling in the whole world. And he is one of the best people in the world at helping you achieve that in a quick, easy way. So definitely go check him out. I'm just saying, I'm just kind of like, you spent the whole time talking about how amazing past life regression was. I got to teach you a little.
It is. I've done past life regression with you, so I know stuff. Okay, so have an awesome day ahead, guys. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel. See you again soon. Bye bye.